What's up, everybody? Welcome to Mystics MMOs. I'm your host, Mystic Raven. All right, so I always have this procedure. I used to play on a console primarily for years before I got onto PC. So I used to have to you know, calculate, check, and whatever. Now, back in the day, we didn't have trial dummies that offered the buffs versus, so all that had to be manually calculated. But now, since I'm also on PC and I have the metrics, I can check the pen value. And that's what I'm doing today versus application of scale factor. So we've talked about force damage, scale factor, and then penetrating value and how that has to be applied. So, for example, my pen value currently is only at 4,689. With this build, I will be using the lover. The reason being because of my downtime due to the Briarheart, which I don't have a consistent amount of weapon damage. But once I exceed it, well, I'll just show you guys. Because on this one, I will have all the debuffs applied. So that's quick to remember. But in a dungeon scenario, this isn't the case. Thus, the adjustments for can we scale the weapon damage higher enough to justify the lack of penetration? More than likely, no. But I always like to check on between the two, and that's what we're going to be doing. So basically, we're just going to go ahead and hit this down, and we're going to just hit a couple of attacks and see where our pen value kind of scales. Don't worry about if you try to go through a full and whatever, you're going to miss stuff, and I don't like to do that. So what I'm going to do is let this roll out, and then it'll adjust my pen value. Okay. So the pen value is kind of interesting because it'll say if I'm 100% at my penetration level or whatever. So once that pops up, I can come over here. My over penetrating value is at 0. My physical penetration effective is 8.6 with my current value on top of the debuffs. But my maximum, due to the fact with the other effects like crushers or whatever effects that's on the target dummy, reaches at the 10. But you'll see my weapon damage is at 6.3. Okay, so it's kind of important when we're taking a note that we're at a 6.3. Well, our effective is 6, and then we're at a 6.3 on the scale factor. Currently, it'll go higher when I'm finalized because I don't have everything unlocked. But it's important to note that, okay? So, and then when we come over to this target dummy, we see a relatively huge difference. Why? Because we don't have every buff or debuff applied in another scenario. So this one was not going to give us all those buffs and stuff, right? So basically, kind of the same principle. We're going to take a look at the pen value in comparison to the weapon damage scale. Just let it roll off, and I want to get those pen values and those adjustments. Okay, so now we see our effectiveness is at 9, right? And our pen's at 10. And our over penetration is at 0. Okay. Our max is once again 6.3. Now, here's a note. Venomous Claw currently max is 14.29 with the Lover Mundus. So I want to keep this in mind when I'm about to make this quick adjustment. So we're at 14. This is on live. 14.29 with the pen value. So I want to take my highest ability off of its max for my adjustment scale. Okay. be getting new Munduses here in like a couple days. Once my ESO Plus bills. So might not have to run around as much. Well, I think it sucks. Alright, so we're gonna go get the Warrior Mundus. It's one of the ones I don't have in the house at the moment. Why? Because weapon damage scaling. Now, I do anticipate it to be lighter on the one target, but the other one, we'll see. And that's why I always make these slight adjustments, man. I'm always checking it out, man.
They should have been back by now. Captain Alhana said they'd meet us here after an evening of prayer, right?
Now, what's interesting is, like I said, I don't have all of my... Like, my Fighters Guild I'm still unlocking. Recently, I've been going with a lot of Maul, Precise, and then Sharpened Bow, and then Thief Mundus on a lot of my stamp configurations.
Walking anyway.
So... Oh, what am I even doing? I don't need to go to the White Shrine. Ugh. We'll start off with the one target demo. Well, I mean, I can actually pull up both. So we'll do that. Okay. So we had the 14.29 on the one dummy. We had 17.31 prior. Okay. Just pissing off. There you go. 17.76. But look, my pen dropped in comparison. 17.76. 17.3. Pen value higher, right? Closer to the cap, but we exceeded. Force damage allows us to go under the value to get the higher amount. I've been telling you guys. That's the way it works. My pen, 700. I love it when people act like I don't know what I'm talking about. Like, these have been ace cards up my sleeves for years. You know, we have content creators who think they know what they're talking about. They never did. They never did. They just never did. Okay. Now this one should be slightly different because of that same factor. So that's why I'm kind of like, you know, we'll see how effective the scaling is on a target that doesn't apply everything. My point. So. Just hit whatever. Okay. Pop it up. Now, this is a standard debuff. We could see it. 1347. Go back 2 fights. And look, I dealt more when I had the pen. On this scenario. And my weapon damage at this point is 6-3. And then we come over here where it's 6-8. So some pen has to be, when you're not having the penetrating values, because once again, like sets like Alkosh, Tremor Scale, whatever else have you, you need less penetration. You need less. Scale factor will actually take you up, thus you needing less penetration. You need less. You don't need to have sharpened. If you're in a trial scenario and let's say these buffs were being applied, you can just rock with literally the like no additional penetrating value. You don't need it. You just don't. You absolutely don't need it. In a trial scenario, as a stam tune, you don't need any pen. You don't need the Mundus, you don't need Sharpen, you don't need shit. Why? Because the weapon damage, when it scales over 6,500, like I've said, you need less penetrating value because it's a static value, though you're scaling weapon damage higher never to achieve it. That's what happens. That's exactly the whole premise behind it. But in a dungeon scenario, you don't have all of these factors, right? So you do need a penetrating value to a degree because no debuffs are applied at all of those. You don't have all those buffs to carry your weapon damage or your critical values or all these other factors. So thus, you do need a little pen. Do you need to be at pen cap? No. Absolutely not, because if you scale still, you only the more you scale, the less you need. That's called forced damage. So, but of course, we're going to get all those buffs on a trial scenario due to all these other outside factors that typically we don't associate in a 4-man. That's why I've said stacking critical value in a 4-man is not as productive as in trial scenario. Once again, everybody tries to associate the two, and you cannot do that, right? There's different setups with different configurations that are more optimal in those scenarios. So, you know, whatever. But of course, I wouldn't know what I'm talking about, even though everybody comes here to find out what's going on. All of those little, you know, content creators. So, yeah, nope. Bye. You're always going to be perma-blocked here. Anyways, so at the end of the day, we get a very nice adjustment for the forced damage to be applied. And like, so basically the whole idea of us getting these dummies was to adjust for future runs, basically in the Munduses. So basically we could build the builds and then switch out their Munduses according to content. And that puts us back at the lever. So I'm always double, triple checking everything. You know, do I rest assured on anything? No, I'm one of the most skeptical people I think on the planet. Even when I think there's something I have down that's kind of, you know, whatever, I still go, like, I'm very skeptical, insanely skeptical, even of myself, more and more. Even if I think I have everything down to the tidbit, you know, if there's one thing that, you know, I anticipate to catch me off guard, it will, but most of the time, you know, I always double, triple, quadruple check. So, but yeah, that's how this works. That's how it's applied. You know, and once again, once this build is done, it will scale what, 68, 7, close to about 68. And it's nice, because this was a very nice setup, and those dots will be like hot, super hot, super hot, and that's what I wanted this build to be. I wanted something unique, Once again, I like unique builds. It's something accessible for players, and yet it brings something very interesting. So I'm definitely all about that, very much so. But yeah, there we have it, said and done. We'll get it done. We'll check it out. We always do. We always test things on PTS. I had target. On PS PlayStation, I had target dummies, but I didn't have the metrics, so I had to basically manually calculate everything.
This is the spot I've been looking
From
for.
tooltip, from the tooltip, using the tooltip as a guiding point to what hit on target per ability and output. So I had to take those three variables to calculate every single equation manually back in the day. Yeah. It was fun. Even before target dummies, we didn't always have target dummies. So I had to use very low resistance targets, little to no resistance, then resistance targets, and then associate. Because we didn't even have icons for the debuffs at one time on console either. So that was fun as well. Very, very interesting. Everything I had to manually, meticulously figure out along the way. And, that's what we did. And that's why I always tell people, you have to eyeball the, certain things. And you have to have fundamentals to be able to associate the modifiers. Right? Because just to see an increase in damage isn't significant enough. Just to be able to throw up this metrics isn't significant enough. Yeah, the metrics will tell me, oh yeah, we increased DPS when we did this, or decreased because of this, but why? It doesn't tell you why. The sets didn't change. I changed Mundus. So why was it a factor on two separate target dummies? Why? Because of the application, right, of the debuffs associated and the scale factor. Those two things go hand in hand. So once you understand that fundamentally, then you can associate the rest of this data to what's being applied or not being apparent. And that's where I feel like a lot of people crutch on a metrics. They crutch so much on this, but they don't understand the intricate numbers. They're still wet behind the ears when it comes to understanding the numbers and how they relate and where it derives from. Because they'll see the critical modifier, the crit hit, how many times the hit to crit values, how many, the weapon damage scale factor right here. But then they're like, okay, they wouldn't associate like this value between the scale and then deducting the pen value. They would just see it and it'd all be French to them, and the only thing they care about is this number at the end of the day, without the associated values that correlate. So, yeah. Anyways, I want to thank everybody for stopping in. If everybody says, oh, Mystic doesn't know. Yeah, right. I never did, right? Like I said, they'll always convert. Always. As always, I'm Mystic Raven. This is Mystic's MMOs. Guys, have a nice day.